Welcome to episode 34 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 15 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week for our inaugural 2021 episode is fellow analyst Anshel Sag. So let's get started. I've been working on a predictions article, and I've narrowed it down, from a cellular networking perspective to 3 big trends. And so I want to reveal one of those on the podcast today, and stay tuned for my Forbes article, likely posting Friday or early the following week. It's no surprise, but a lot of my other fellow analysts in the industry are predicting the same thing, and it's about private networking. And when we look back at 2020, there were plenty of trials. I think people were kicking the tires on it, but there have been some significant developments that have occurred. And in particular, I've been following Nokia here, and I really believe it, even though Nokia's, they've had some challenges, there's been further management turnover, but that's the new CEO sort of right-sizing the business and getting things aligned there. But a real shining star for the company has been private networking, and almost 200 deployments to date, with Nokia. And what I really believe is going to accelerate, especially 5G private networking deployment this year, is the fact that they announced, I believe it was in July of last year, sort of an end-to-end offering that's focused on standalone for 5G. And obviously these 200 deployments to date have been a mix of LTE and 5G, but we've talked about standalone before. It brings the true promise of 5G with throughput and latency, given you're matching that core network infrastructure that's enabled with 5G with RAN infrastructure that's enabled for 5G. And I believe AT&T, within the US should be a leader as well. In October of last year, they announced a partnership with Nokia where AT&T plans to integrate Nokia's 5G standalone solutions and the breadth and depth of the Nokia private networking solutions into an AT&T managed service. And really, that's going to help facilitate the ease of deployment for businesses that want to kick the tires on it. And we're going to talk about the C-Band spectrum auction later in the podcast. But obviously, a lot of what's driving this is access to spectrum. When you look at recent auctions, whether it was through CBRS or C-Band, you're seeing non-carriers bidding for this. You're seeing municipalities, you're seeing utilities, oil and gas. And so that democratization of access to licensed spectrum is really the impetus that's, kind of driving things here. So I'd love to get your insights, Anshel, on private networking as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think private networking is going to be something that's going to be a long-term evolution. I think that last year was very much a trial year. I think what will be interesting is to see how much attention will be paid to private networking once the Olympics happens in Japan, because I think there are going to be a lot of things that were planned for last year that will have been upgraded and improved upon and refined in a way that make 5G look very good. And I believe that in Japan, they will have a much more mature 5G network, and there will be a lot of interesting use cases that will get people excited about private 5G networking, I believe. So I think we'll probably see a very big kickstart in the second half of the year when it comes to private networking. I do think that India might be an interesting application as well, because there's such a greenfield opportunity, and they are starting from zero this year. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that ends up being private networking. Additionally, I think there's a lot of industry that wants to get involved, and I think a lot of them have figured out whether the time is right for them or not. And I think we'll find out this year whether or not private 5G networking is really going to take off now, or if it's going to need to wait for later releases like release 17.
Yeah, you make a really good point. The Olympics that's a big stage globally, right? And I think a lot of people have been fatigued with what they refer to as the 5G hype cycle. But that's going to put, not only 5G, but private networking front and center there. So I didn't even think about that, but that's just another reason why, you know, I believe potentially it's gonna see some tremendous momentum this year. So we'll keep our eyes open and we'll report back as things develop. Let's move to your first topic this week, and there's a little bit of news out of Qualcomm again.
Yeah, so Qualcomm decided to wait until the first week of the year, right before CES, to announce that they will be launching a low-end 5G chipset, which means that they will be launching in devices ranging from $125 to $250. This was actually part of a conversation I had with Cristiano Amon last year, where I asked him, what will this 4 series look like in terms of product pricing? And he said that it would be around 125 to 250. So that's a very large component of the market. That's basically all of India, China, Africa.
Developing parts of the world, yeah.
It's going to be, you know, anywhere from 1 to 2 billion 5G devices will be in that price range. So it'll be a very big deal for the industry to gain momentum and to maximize the amount of 5G subscribers that they have on their network, because the reality is transitioning from 4G to 5G not only improves user speeds, but also improves utilization of network infrastructure and spectrum, which ultimately improves profitability, as well as introducing new services that can allow the operators to make more money.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, I don't think there's anyone that can touch Qualcomm right now, you know, given just the range of price points that they're supporting. And this is really, from my perspective, going to really accelerate the deployment and adoption of 5G. When you have, because, you know, one of the huge barriers is like, hey, you know, if it's 1,000 US, you know, or 1,000 euro, you know, type smart device, that's going to lock you out of a lot of the customer segmentation.
Unlike operators like Verizon, the cheapest 5G device you can get today is going to be $400 because it has to have millimeter wave, because that's, until late last year, that's all you could do on Verizon, and Verizon wants every device to have millimeter wave. So it's an interesting development. In addition to that, Qualcomm got a new CEO who was previously the company's president, Cristiano Amon, and he was kind of the heir apparent. So it made sense that he would become CEO. I think it maybe happened a year too late. It depends on who you ask. But it was kind of expected that he would become CEO, and he has. So the good thing is that he really understands 5G, and he's been leading, you know, spearheading the lead on 5G. And I think he's the perfect CEO for them to, you know, eventually move into 6G and future Gs.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I've met him at, you know, the 5G Summit events, and he's incredibly pragmatic. You know, he, like you said, he understands the technology, but he also understands the business, and that's often a hard combination to find in an executive. So no surprise. I think, you know, everyone was expecting it. To your point, it may have been a little bit later than expected, but and I believe, right, he's going to be taking over mid this year. Is that right?
Yeah. He'll be taking over in June. Yeah. The reality is he's been running a big chunk of the company for the last few years. So it's almost a formality at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Great. Well, hey, thanks for the update there, Anshel. Let's go to my second topic this week. And I want to talk about SK Telecom and AWS. So on prior podcasts, I have spoken about AWS Wavelength. This is their mobile edge, you know, services platform. And so early this year, late breaking, SK Telecom and Amazon Web Services announced a partnership to deliver edge-based cloud services. And the way this gets enabled is through what AWS refers to as Wavelength Zones. And so AWS has deployed its first Wavelength zone in the central part of South Korea. There are plans to expand that footprint. I mean, Seoul and Busan are two of the larger cities in the country. Those are likely coming very soon as well. But this is going to enable, you know, a supercharge of 5G services. And as I've spoken in the past, you know, I track all of the carriers on a global basis. And from my perspective, SK Telecom has done an exceptional job leaning into 5G services and not simply access. And so they've done a lot of things, mostly on the consumer front. But if you think about this, what this can do is supercharge, cloud-based gaming and that sort of thing on the consumer side. And certainly on the enterprise side, it's going to unlock a whole host of applications from my perspective that require very low latency, like video intensive applications. I've spoken to what I've referred to as extended SME, where you're using high resolution, you're transmitting high resolution video to a device, field service type, scenario, and where you can send a technician out with limited amount of training, but have this smart device and this connection that's connected back to a hub where you can diagnose and troubleshoot issues with a trained technician on the other end there. So I think this is very, very exciting, and for the South Korea market, it's going to continue, in my mind, to elevate SK Telecom, and it's like they keep sort of adding to their portfolio and their capabilities, and certainly their competitors in that country are capable, but SK Telecom, from my perspective, has taken a real leadership position. Any thoughts there?
No, I've just kind of been following all the different zones that they keep lighting up. I believe that they're up to 20 zones now or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right?
probably more. That was of last year. So
Yeah, we'll see what the total number is, but it's interesting to see that they're ramping pretty aggressively.
yeah. Well, let's move to your second topic, and we like to have fun with the conspiracy theorists out there, and I did see this story as well, but you want to sort of talk about some sort of rumor about a 5G chip implanted within the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah, so I think we've covered this more than once before,
Yeah.
but it keeps coming up because people are stupid.
They're uneducated.
Uneducated, I would have said the first time or second time. I think we've gotten to the stupid point. But the reality is that people's lack of understanding of cellular technology leads them to believe anything that they hear. And one of those is that COVID can be caused by 5G, or that 5G is somehow connected to COVID in one way or another. In this case, 5G is connected to COVID in the sense that it is a multi-tier conspiracy, that there are chips in the vaccine and that those chips happen to be 5G chips.
Right.
And what ended up happening was a gentleman by the name of Mario from Italy had found that people were sharing a schematic of a COVID 5G chip diagram. And people did some research and discovered that, including Mario, that it was actually a guitar pedal diagram.
I love it.
And that it was actually made by a company called Boss, makes guitar pedals, and called the Boss Metal Zone guitar pedal. And as a result, people just didn't understand that, like, first of all, 5G chip would be way more complicated than that, and that there are no chips in vaccines. And the only association of chips with vaccines is that there are NFC chips on the vials to track where they've been and what the temperatures that they've been under, so they can actually be administered safely. So this is just a continuation of the whole COVID 5G conspiracy thing, and is getting tied to the conspiracy around chips and vaccines. But it's been debunked by pretty much everyone around the internet by this point. And it's really unfortunate because it's nowhere near being true.
Yeah. And I had coffee with my stepmother just the other day, and we were talking about 5G, and she thinks that it's dangerous, somehow, and so there's a lot of FUD that's put out there, and quite honestly, silly things like what you just talked about, what you just addressed, and it doesn't help, it doesn't help at all, and it just creates confusion in the marketplace. So that's one of the reasons why you and I are frequent contributors on Forbes to educate people, and why we like to record these podcasts every week. So interesting. Let's move to my third and final topic this week, and it's the C-Band auction. And I believe in a prior podcast we talked about this. Estimates
the last podcast, actually.
Yeah, it may have been.
It was at 50 billion at the last point we spoke.
You're right, right. And, and obviously, this is an important auction because it's selling mid-band spectrum assets that are highly prized for its balance.
280 megahertz of it.
And it's a tremendous amount, right? And just the characteristics of the spectrum and mid-band gives you the best balance of performance and propagation. And a lot of analysts were expecting it not even to surpass 35 billion, but at last count it was close to 80 billion.
It's already past 80 billion.
Is it already? Okay, so today it's past 80 billion.
Yeah,
And
there's a couple rounds that are happening today, and the most recent round we are at 80,368 million.
It's unbelievable. And and actually I spoke with NPR earlier this week. That story should air any day, but I mean, given the events that unfolded yesterday in Washington D.C., we'll see if that's delayed. But NPR was wanting to get my perspective on, hey, why has the auction spiraled so sort of out of control and hit the stratosphere here? And it's no secret in the U.S. that AT&T and Verizon need mid-band spectrum. They have very, very small possession of that, and they realize how important it is going to be to acquire these assets to build out their 5G networks. T-Mobile, we've spoken about T-Mobile in the past. With the Sprint acquisition, they're sitting very, very favorably from a low, mid, and high band spectrum footprint. And actually AT&T and Verizon, were asking the FCC to not allow T-Mobile to even bid in this auction because they have so many mid-band spectrum assets. But T-Mobile did participate. A lot of people believe that actually having T-Mobile participate actually bid up the auctions, which I believe is true.
Right.
And even T-Mobile's CEO Mike Sievert was predicting that he thought that AT&T and Verizon would beat each other up and bid up the auction, and that's exactly what's happened. So one of my big concerns here, though, is that we talked about this last year on the last podcast. The FCC is sort of beating its chest, saying, "Look what we've done. Look at all the dollars we're bringing into the government coffers." But at the end of the day, this is going to potentially increase the cost for subscribership.
Oh no, it absolutely will.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
This will be passed down to consumers. Who else are they going to pass it down to?
Yeah.
Their business customers. They're a small fraction of the size of their businesses. Overall, it's going to be consumers who pay for it.
Yeah. Now, I expect, one of my other predictions, for this year, and stay tuned for that Forbes article, is that you're going to really see discrete 5G service delivery take off. In a 4G world, it was all about access. But in order for these operators to recoup their investment in spectrum assets and the billions of dollars they're spending on rolling out infrastructure, they're going to have to go out and deploy enterprise services that enterprises are going to pay big bucks for.
So what I was going to say is, and you've actually made this point last year, so we're kind of like ping-ponging off each other on these points, but
yeah,
the reality is the cost of deploying this infrastructure is going to be massive.
Yeah.
And they're already spending, let's say, 30 billion each. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, Verizon and AT&T both are around 30 billion for the spectrum. They're going to probably end up spending almost just as much to roll out the spectrum, because this is a high band. This is 3.7 to 4 gigahertz.
Yeah.
So it does not propagate anywhere near as well as 2.5 will. Yeah. And that's with T-Mobile utilizing Sprint's HPUE technology, which allows 2.5 to propagate like 1.9. So it's going to be hard. They're going to have to densify their networks even more than they already have. And Verizon has basically admitted that they're never going to deploy millimeter wave in a blanket fashion because they can't, and they shouldn't. But deploying this mid-band is going to be very expensive, and they're going to have to figure out the whole permitting situation and arguing with municipalities and conspiracy theories around 5G causing cancer and all these other things. And I think it's going to take them a while to roll this out, just because of the capital cost is going to be required to roll these things out. And I honestly think the operators are going to ask for some kind of government program to accelerate the deployment of 5G, because they just spent 30 billion each on
spectrum.
the spectrum, and they're like, where's the rest of our budget for infrastructure? So I think that's going to be the biggest concern, and I think they're going to ask for the government to step in. And with a new administration and with one party rule effectively, it'll be interesting to see how quickly that happens, or if it even does happen. But I do think it will be something that will be necessary to happen in order for the two operators to catch up to T-Mobile in a meaningful fashion anytime soon.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you brought up the fact that given the spectrum characteristics, it's going to require densification. And that's not easy. You know, even in my hometown of Austin, Texas, where we pride ourselves on being a tech-forward city, the operators have had huge challenges with the local government here because they're just uneducated. They don't understand 5G. And it goes back to a lot of that misinformation.
And I live in a city where we are also technologically advanced, but we also have Qualcomm. And they've done a good job of educating our government, I believe, because we have all three carriers with 5G in San Diego. And that's why I will be writing my article on Forbes about that experience and what I predict will happen this year with the different carriers and 5G experiences and devices. So stay tuned for that. But it's really interesting because it does really come down to municipality. And I think we need to have more of a federal approach to streamlining these things, which I think the FCC was trying to do. But I think there was a little bit of overreach and they ended up getting into a lot of legal kerfuffles. Yeah,
I agree with you. We'll keep our eyes on this and see where it goes. Man, could it go to 100 billion? Who knows? That would be crazy. Let's end with your third topic this week, and you want to talk about T-Mobile and a fixed wireless access announcement.
Yeah, so T-Mobile just announced basically that they are expecting to update their current fixed wireless deployments, which are in pilot currently with 4G to 5G, and that they expect the speeds to be much faster than what the 4G offering is going to deliver today. And considering the experience that I've seen with their mid-band here in San Diego, because they haven't officially rolled it out, but I was able to find it in a couple places, and I was very impressed with it. The reality is there's a very high expectation that someone with a mid-band coverage, which is what I believe T-Mobile is going to primarily use for this, will get anywhere from 300 to 500 megabits with a fixed wireless solution. And having that kind of deployment with enough capacity, which I think they have, I think there's an absolute opportunity for them to roll out a fixed wireless 5G on mid-band that will give competition to the Comcasts and the AT&Ts in places where they've never had competition before, which will ultimately drive better user experiences and better pricing, because I know people who just don't have a choice and they're really not happy with their experience.
Yeah. You know, I kind of perused the list of bidders on, on C-Band, and to your mid-band spectrum point, there are a lot of cable operators that are trying to go after those assets. There are a lot of wireless ISPs as well. So, and it's no secret that the cable industry is in transition. They're trying to figure out where to go. They're getting their lunch eaten by the streaming services with original content, right? And so, and that's one of the reasons why Dish is getting into, mobile access as well. So,
that's why Comcast already has a mobile service, right? Even though they're piggybacking on Verizon.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
And Charter is also bidding. I mean, it's everything is just kind of melding together into one.
It is. Yeah. Sort of all glomming together. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Well, hey, buddy, this was a great first podcast to kick off the new year. Why don't you take us home? Absolutely.
We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to reach out to us and provide a specific 5G topic they would like for us to cover in a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Whaletown Tech, and I'm at Anshel. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week.